Clay. I know it makes sense thematically in this series about a hard-nosed, grizzled veteran getting to the end of his life and realizing that he's never felt the loving caress of a woman for a very long time. But was it really necessary to make the new Borg ships look like vaginas? Was that something that was required to make a thematic connection to the love that Jean-Luc Picard cannot feel at this point? Am I alone? I didn't see anyone talk about this, and all I saw was vagina when that thing came in. It came in hard.
I did also notice that, but I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? Because I mean, you've got all the Borg ships we've seen are the three foundational building blocks of geometry, which are cubes, spheres, and vaginas.
Right. The cube is the most stable shape, and the vagina is the most unstable thing in human history. And that's right.
Alex, this is Sir Patrick. I have 2 requests for season 2. 1, can we have my housekeeper just be so horny for me? And 2, I have some notes on the ship.
Sounds about right. Hey, patrons, welcome to our what's going to be fun coverage, it seems like, of Star Trek Picard Season 2. I'm excited. I just wanted to take a moment to seriously thank everybody for supporting the show. You guys are the greatest listeners, and so we felt that it was appropriate to cover Picard for you, and here it is. So, Clay, first, how are you? Things going well?
I'm good. I was looking forward to getting into this. I think I need to just like recalibrate myself for modern Star Trek because we haven't watched it in quite a while.
Yeah, I have some questions I wanted to ask, whether or not this is indicative of the show or if it's just modern Star Trek or if it's indicative of the episode itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And just like visually, it's very different from the stuff we've been watching lately. Obviously, we've been doing Voyager and Enterprise most recently. But it's modern. It's a very modern looking show, which it takes a minute to get used to because Star Trek is everything we've been watching has been from the 25 years ago.
Yeah. the blurry edge that you get crystal clear. Like I notice it mostly strangely in stuff like the subspace anomaly that they look at the start. It looks so distinct in a way that like I actually think I prefer the older look where it was slightly like there's like a blurriness that makes it feel like it's a part of the universe. The new special effects make it feel like this is Adobe After Effects. You know,
right,
you're looking at After Effects right now, and I never get a sense from that. But that's not really a problem with the episode. It's just it ties into what you were saying about the way the thing looks at this point.
Yeah, and the lighting is obviously different, and everything is very sleek. Which is not, I mean, these are not negative things. Obviously, it's the future, so things should look that way. It's just, it's just different. It just takes a minute to recalibrate watching the new stuff.
You know where I think it's worse, actually, is that I think in the scenes where the scene where they're at Starfleet Academy in this opening episode, Stargazer. Let me give the info for this one, actually, to get that out of the way. It's The Stargazer is the first episode of the second season of Star Trek Picard. Came out on March 3rd, 2022. Story credit goes to Akiva Goldsman and Terry Matalas. Directed by Doug Aroniokoski. In-universe date is 2401. This is the first Star Trek episode to take place in the 25th century. In this episode, Starfleet must once again call on the legendary Jean-Luc Picard after members of his former crew, Cristóbal Rios, 7 of 9, Raffi Musiker, and Dr. Agnes Jurati, discover an anomaly in space that threatens the galaxy. Not a great log line, but I'm happy that it reminded me of everyone's full name because I could not remember their names for the life of me. I think just quickly, I think that the worst, the weakness of modern filming, I think, shows up in scenes like the Starfleet Academy graduation scene, where it's Picard and Elnor just doing a back and forth like 2-shot conversation, and it looks like shit. It looks terrible. Like it looks so cheap. You know what I mean? Like there is no larger set that they can use to establish where they're standing or anything like that. So it's just this back and forth, like shot, reaction shot. And it looks like a student film, I think, sometimes. It looks nice, but the editing and the techniques they're using are just really subpar. And I'm not going to say that like Voyager uses Academy Award-winning cinematography, but I at least feel like you have a sense of a place in every Voyager shot. Like I understand where the characters are standing. I only noticed that in sort of one-off scenes of the new series, like the Starfleet Academy, where they clearly don't have a set for it that they've designed or anything like that. They're just in a hallway or something.
Yeah, they put up some technical drawings.
Right, some glass shit in the background or whatever, but that's about it. That's my only point. I don't have much to say about the way that it looks, really.
Yeah, I think overall I like it. The visuals. I oddly enough, I was wondering if they were doing kind of a Star Trek Generations thing with the costumes, in that the general Starfleet uniforms seem to be a little bit different than the ones the cadets wore. And I actually preferred the design of the cadets one a little bit, because it was the same kind of classic black body and colored shoulder piece, but it had like a little bit more of like an angular shape where the black goes up over where the delta pin goes.
Right.
And I was wondering if they were going to make all of them look like that eventually or what, but I think it was just what the cadets are wearing. But,
yeah.
I mean, you know, not to keep harping on the costumes and stuff on these shows that we watch, but like even this felt more like Star Trek to me, seeing people walking around in Star Trek uniforms going on to Star Trek ships, you know. It really goes a long way, at least for me.
Would you I have a lot of larger questions. I'm not sure how interested I am in talking about the specifics of this episode, so maybe we just get that out of the way quick in terms of like, what did you think about this one?
I liked it. I think the setup at the end of it is interesting. I'm curious to see where the story goes, what's going on. I'm really on the fence as whether or not they could have done it faster. Because this episode is kind of mostly just hanging around, catching up with people,
sure.
which is not a bad thing per se, but I'm on the fence because like I think you could argue that you could get to the goods a little bit quicker. However, the stuff that they're talking about is on theme in a way that sometimes these shows tend not to be.
Yep.
So I guess it's really dealer's choice on that one. But as far as like the first episode goes to get you back into Picard, I actually thought it was pretty enjoyable. Except for the fact that, holy hell, Patrick Stewart is old.
He's old, isn't he?
He is
distracting.
Old.
Yep.
It is distracting, and I feel really bad saying that, but it's just it's really coming across through this one, in a way that hopefully I get used to it, but it's a little tough. But.
It's hard because it thematically matches what they're trying to talk about, right? Like he's at the end of his life, so you're like, he should be old. I have a problem in that whenever he tries to sound commanding, it sounds like a nursing home person, like asking for an extra glass of water. And it's like so feeble that you're just like, I wouldn't say I feel bad for him, but it's hard to, he's no longer the Picard of the show in any kind of physical way, you know?
Right. Which, I mean, you know, they're not trying to say that he, you know, they're not trying to, give Bruce Willis hair, to coin a phrase.
Sure. They're giving Delancey some ink in the hair, I think, is the way that they're going.
Yeah, I thought he looked great. He looked a lot better than I thought he would. I think, fortunately, the story they're telling doesn't require them to try and push him back towards his prime at all.
Except for the sex angle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, once we get there, I mean, we're gonna see it. And he's gotta show up on that day.
Yep. I would agree.
This is Paramount Plus, baby. They're not.
I got the premium tier for a reason.
I know.
We'll talk about all that stuff. My briefest of opinions is that I thought this was fine. Really. people who are more familiar with the modern Trek who have been watching Discovery on the Discord and stuff are like, oh my God, since this is better than anything Discovery's done recently. Probably maybe the best new modern Star Trek episode that's shown up. And I haven't been watching Discovery, and I feel like I've been away from modern Trek for a very long time, where coming into
it's been a while.
So my question at the start is, I have a hard time determining whether or not, because I've been away from it, I can fault the tropes of modern Trek are at play here, or if it's the fact that this feels very much like a rebooted pilot in a lot of ways, where it's extremely clunky and extremely exposition-y for people that I feel like we just met, and I still appreciated and needed reminders about where everyone is supposed to be at this point and what's going on.
Right.
But the way that they catch you up on everyone is extremely clumsy writing wise. It's just people walk in and just go, well, I got in a fight with Raffi and we broke up and now things are tense between us and I hope I don't run into her. And it's like, and then, Picard meets 7 of 9. There's a lot of exposition about the Borg and stuff like that. And there's a lot of exposition about the Romulan from the first season, the male, has died, which now allows Picard to have sex with Laris, I guess is the outcome. I didn't think they were lovers. I thought they were brother and sister, those two.
Honestly, I don't even remember.
Okay.
I know there were 2 of them, and when
one's gone.
One's gone, and when he starts talking about it, I was like, oh, I guess they were together. I
guess.
Didn't really. Also, not only is he now conveniently absent, they've written this new Romulan mating thing in where it's like, we love forever, but if we get to love again, we love even harder the second time.
It's the opposite of A Star is Born story. It's probably some tragedy of Zhaban hung himself in the garage.
By our culture, I owe it to my dead husband to just drown you.
Is she just painting just murals of Borg ships all over the house? And yeah, my last thing about, on a technical level, I thought this was okay, but incredibly clumsy in a lot of ways. And I think that a way to tie it into thematically what I thought overall is that there is this constant struggle with this show to be its own thing, but also just fill you with memberberry juice the entire time that you're watching it. And I thought what a perfect representation of that was I see that battle happening in the 2 guest star appearances they had here. They had Whoopi come back as Guinan, and they had Delancey come back as Q. I thought Guinan and Picard, their scene felt like Stewart and Whoopi Goldberg playing cosplay in a bar for 5 minutes. But Delancey came in, and I thought he felt like Q at that time. When he appeared, I was like, Delancey actually remembers what it is to be that character in this show in a way that the other characters I don't think ever really do. I think Picard and Stewart are too old, and Whoopi Goldberg is too old, and she looks like she's 5 Guinans at this point, and it's incredibly distracting. Well, I just think that it's so because she's getting older and she's heavier, the show has to go out of its way to make up this reason that she looks that way. And it's like, I wish she just didn't mention this stuff. She says that Elorians can age fast if they want to or something like that. And also, don't feel bad for her, Clay. She's like a Nazi sympathizer at this point. So I noticed that battle waging out constantly in this show. And I thought it was really exemplified by those 2 appearances between those 2 characters.
Yeah. I was kind of surprised. I mean, I guess she probably will show up again at some point, but I was kind of surprised that the Guinan scene was just there to talk about Picard's love life.
Yes. Did you feel she felt like Guinan to you?
Not really.
No, I didn't think she
it's
felt
one
like
of those things where my distance from that character at this point is probably similar to her distance from that character at this point.
Yep.
Except that, she can always go back and remember how to do it. So I honestly didn't really have that much of a shock over it. But that being said, like there was something missing. Like it did. Saying that they were in cosplay does seem kind of accurate because there was just something missing about the portrayal, I think.
I don't think either of those characters feel like they're even evolved versions of what they were previously, because Guinan to me felt like more like it was just Whoopi, and it had lost that sort of Guinan mystique to her. And I don't think the script did her any favors, because I don't think her lines were written in a very Guinan-y kind of way. It was written more like it's just Whoopi and Stewart hanging out, talking about their past career, and
drinking hooch.
And I took her line about like, let's explore the final frontier to mean let's have sex. Really? Like there was this weird tone to it that I didn't think was right. And I know that Delancey's appearance is much more brief and it's only like 3 lines, but he felt right to me. He felt like Q, and I appreciated that. And I think that the show is just having some real trouble because I'll ask you, like, I guess a question I have for you is, let's assume that I absorb this show as part of the Picard character, right? So I like fully embrace the show as the end of this character's life, because I assume he's going to die at the end of this series. And this is taken with his entirety of the TNG era in the movies. This is another chapter in that life, and I'm going to accept that, and I'm going to bring all that in, and I'm going to see this holistic view of this character.
That's very big of you.
My problem is, and this is not a fault of the show, but it's something that I think about while I'm watching it, is that the themes that they're going to go through here, which is that Picard is at the end of his life and realizing that he kind of never had a love. His relationships were kind of fraught. He never really built these kind of lasting relationships or love life that he would have wanted to by the end of it. That's okay. But what it does to me is it makes me wonder, if I go back to TNG, am I going to see a man wasting his life? And is that the way that I want to, is that the thing that I want to take away from this? Because to me, the TNG Picard was a artificial paragon of virtue, right? That the reason he didn't have relationships and feel anything like that was because he was, as a character, molded in this like perfect Renaissance man thing where he was all about duty and honor and stuff like that. If this show, in its attempt to flesh him out as a real human and to take away that sort of artificial Star Trek TNG thing from him, it makes me look back and go, is his life in TNG a tragedy at this point? Because he's not happy in those moments. Does that make sense?
Yeah, excuse me. I don't know if those things need to be mutually exclusive, though, because I think he can be a different person after his time in Starfleet, and he can be a different person between the person he was in Starfleet and the person he is after he retires. I mean, he can be about different things without having to look back on the things that he has done and feel bad about it, or feel like he wasted his life or anything like that. I think one of the things that might be on their minds with the story that they're telling is the idea of like shifting priorities and stuff, where it's like, are the stars still the thing that he cares about the most, or is he now thinking about something else? Is it time to leave that stuff behind? I don't know. I don't think you have to look back and think that he's just miserable the entire time.
Well, but the setup of this whole thing is that he's regretful and going through a sort of therapy that he was never open enough in his past about it, right? So it's like this. I think that the way that this is retrospectively going back and looking at that, and they're sort of having conversations with Guinan about it, and I imagine they're going to have more conversations moving forward. I don't think that they're going to say that he is an unhappy person during that period, but what it's doing is that it's kind of thematically undermining what I think makes Picard as a character of TNG interesting, and that it's like this attempt to romanticize him is actually not what the strength of the character was from the show, because the character of the show is almost not human in a way. And
right.
I think it's probably just an aspect of the modern Trek stuff is trying to go for the emotional. Like these series seems to prefer the emotional over any kind of allegory or hard-boiled sci-fi type stuff. And in a way that seeing Stewart age and become more feeble in his old age, it's similarly affecting the character by the way that they're choosing what he's thinking about at this point. And
well,
go ahead.
I guess, though, is there not room for the character to change since TNG?
I think there is. I think that my problem there is that I think Laris is a good example of that. Like, Laris to me feels that she is the romantic interest just because she's the only female character around that we know and he can attach himself to. So,
sure,
I think that we're starting off in this place where I can understand that things have changed and stuff has gone on, but even in the first season, I don't think there was a real focus on how he got to that point, which is maybe more interesting than being there now. Maybe. I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe the second season could change my mind about it, but that's how I feel, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't know. Because I think the tough thing is, how do you, like, I think the problem when we're looking at this show and saying that, oh, this doesn't feel like Patrick Stewart playing Picard, I think that is because they are trying to humanize him and make him more personable and just more than just the captain of the Enterprise. And I think maybe there is a middle ground there where they can maintain elements of the previous character and just sort of expand them with what they're doing now in a way that I don't feel like they really have, because it does kind of feel like it's kind of a different character.
I just think he's too sad, I think. Like, yeah. I think he can't be this sad for that kind of what you're saying to come across, because Picard of the show never felt so sad. I can deal with a little sadness. Maybe the relationship could be enough, but he doesn't. And I don't know if it's the performance or something, but he doesn't command the bridge the way that I would expect him to, and then have this sort of relationship drama on the edge.
That's the thing, right? It's like, in order for that stuff to really land, it has to be a contrast with the Picard that you know. And we never really get the Picard that we know. Like, when he shows up to the Stargazer and is on the bridge, it's not like he clicks back into Picard or anything. You know what I mean? Right. It's not like he clicks back into TNG Picard, where you're like, okay, this is he's going back to the thing that he knows. This is the environment that he's comfortable with, which contrasts with him, the older, which, you know, they play it probably the nicest little bit of non-verbal exposition or character showing character in the episode is when the admiral or whoever shows up to him and to his place, plays him the voicemail from the Borg, and then he fucks off right as Laris is coming home, and he's just like, doesn't even stop. Like, he probably knows she's coming in the house. Like, she, you know, you can hear when someone's pulled up and like they're getting ready to, he just leaves. He doesn't say bye. He doesn't leave a note. He doesn't do anything.
Right.
And he's clearly running from this new version of himself.
Yeah.
And I think that element's really nice, but I don't feel like you get that contrast when he is back, quote unquote, in his element, that he is trying to regain that place that he feels like he needs to be in, or anything like that. His comfort zone. So I think maybe that is what is a little bit shaky about this, because like that's sort of like looking back on your life and regretting stuff. You could have spent, you know, 70 some odd years, or however many years he was in Starfleet, doing doing everything you thought you wanted, and you're still 20 years later when you're by yourself and you're kind of towards the end of your life, you're going to regret some shit.
Yes.
Like that stuff. I don't think you need to change your opinion of TNG Picard because the feelings and thoughts he's having now are things that just naturally occur later in life anyway. Like after your glory days are over, that's when this stuff you start to think about things that you've done, or in his case, or in many people's case, things you haven't done. Mm-hmm. And I think there is room for both of those things to coexist. I wish they would give us a little bit more of that contrast with the character, though. But it's tough because he is, he's not bad. Like, he's still Patrick Stewart. The guy could sleepwalk his way through a Star Trek episode. But they're not really, at least in this episode, they're not really giving him much to do.
Yeah. I think Rios gives him permission to do a command on the bridge, which is interesting. It's like he doesn't snap back into, I tell people what to do. This is my job.
Right.
Sort of.
He doesn't have that. He doesn't have, well, it's like, it's weird because, like, excuse me, there is an element of this show that is more of a Patrick Stewart, this is your life kind of thing than it is a Star Trek show. Yeah. Because, like, when he comes back to the Stargazer, he's like, man, it's crazy being back here. I used to command this ship. It's like he's going to see Guinan. Oh, it's so good to see Guinan. Last season, he's going to see Riker. Oh, it's good to see Riker, which is true. I mean, it's okay, cool. But, like, if the only reason you're doing this stuff is to do like a look back on this stuff, and it's tough to really criticize because, like, the kind of character he is in the show, he is in that position where excuse me, where that makes sense for him to be nostalgic about this stuff the way that the people who are watching the show are being nostalgic about it, because he is at that point in his life. However, I think that only gets you so far.
Do you think that, would you say that Picard, the character, is nostalgic in this one? Because I think that's kind of my problem, is that I would not say he is nostalgic. I feel that the character is going back and talking to characters that he knows. But the reason he's doing it is not a kind of, I want to get back to that point of view. It's more, to me, it feels more artificial. That these are characters we know that we can bring in, and he can talk to them. But I don't feel that this Picard, as the character is written and performed, is actively wishing to go back to what he had. Maybe that was the case in the first season. Here, at least, it seems that he's more just regretful about things that never came to pass. And it's not that he has a great fondness for the past. This character would almost consider going back and repeating what he did to be a mistake, because he does not feel that way anymore. And I think that's what's strange about the character to me, is because if they're not going to celebrate the character or have him hold on to the remnants of what his past was, I feel that the sorrow he's feeling is overwhelming to a point of, it's kind of ignoring how the character was set up as like one of the greatest people in Star Trek history. So, like, I feel that he should be more celebratory of his past than the kind of moroseness that he finds himself in. And I don't think that the revisiting characters is any attempt to recapture glory. I feel that it's just an excuse to bring back old characters and have them talk to him. And I'm a little bit more cynical about that, I guess.
Yeah, I guess what's interesting about it is, if you look at the way they handle Captain Kirk versus the way they handled Picard here. Obviously, Kirk was younger when they were starting to do these stories, but still, it's more or less the same kind
story.
Of thing.
Yeah.
Kirk is very much someone who wants to get out from behind a desk, who wants to recapture his glory days. He's the one who's strolling onto the bridge of the new Enterprise and barking orders, even though he's not the captain anymore.
Yeah.
And he has to deal with the fact that he is no longer the captain. I do kind of think it is interesting that they are choosing to go a different way with Picard in that sense, where he's not, like, I think with him, it's not coming down to him regretting anything that he has done, but like he says in the episode, regretting the things he didn't do.
Yeah.
And I do think that's a really interesting take to go with him, because he is such a paragon of Starfleet virtue, and he is the the number one person you look to as a role model in Starfleet. And for him to have fallible moments and fallible feelings where he's like, yeah, everything I did was great. However, maybe it wasn't everything.
Yeah.
Is an interesting way to go with him.
Yeah, and I think that the season could change this. I am just sort of concerned about this first episode.
Oh,
of the
everything
season.
that we've talked about for the past 15 minutes, I don't think is going to come up again.
No,
on the show.
that's the.
Don't
we have
get
to
me wrong.
recalibrate ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that what I will say, like in terms of that, is like one of the biggest positives of this episode is that I understand the structure of the season. I think, unless they pull the rug out from under me, I understand what they're trying to do so far in a way that Discovery and stuff never really tracked that well. I suppose I would argue like they lay the theme on so thick here that it's a little heavy-handed at points. Like, if you're not getting what they're laying down, you might have something wrong with you, I guess. They're extremely unsubtle about it. He has numerous conversations with different characters about the same thing throughout it. And so I understand that they're doing that. And I think that that's appropriate. And I like the theme, and I like the idea that this is what they're going to play with. I like the idea of like this idea of past regrets or not having done the things that maybe you think that you should do, and whether or not you can find happiness and stuff like that. They sneak in occasional nice metaphors in the writing about like he's harvesting the grapes in the very start, and he likes the end of the season, and it matches up with his life, yada yada, all that stuff. I think that's all well and good. I guess I'm done with the sort of Picard angle, because that was my major takeaway, is whether or not that this show is significantly altering my perspective of Picard in a way that I think undermines the original character. But I'll take your point. I think that what you're saying is fair. It's like if they balanced it a little bit better, and not to retread a Kirk thing where he's just actively trying to go back out there and re-seize control of everything. But if he didn't just feel like he felt this way in the first season, like such a passive carry-on character. Like, I think that's the main issue. I watched scenes like the teaser, which I think was actually a pretty weak teaser, like the opening scene that they then just repeat later on, and you don't really change perspective about anything. Nothing changes. Yeah. I just think that
all you learn is that the people are not dead.
Right? Yeah, they're shot, not dead. But like him. You feel bad, but it's like him trying to like activate the self-destruct sequence. He just feels very old, and I know they're going to tie that in, but we'll see where it goes from that. But yeah, I didn't like the opening teaser because it was one of those things where they show you it again, and the only thing you learn is what you say, that people aren't dying from being shot by that type of stuff. Did you have anything else you want to say about Picard, or you want to move on to something else bigger about the episode?
I think we can probably move on. I think that what would be interesting, that would make this story work for me in a satisfying way based on the stuff that we've been talking about and the way that he's presented, is if the end of the story, and maybe this is where they're going, I don't know, is him kind of realizing that the two versions of himself can coexist. Yeah. Like he doesn't have to regret things.
It's going to be about a living in the moment thing, I think. He's going to realize that the present, it's like a very stoic philosophy. It's like he can't look back on his past. It's about what he can do now.
Oh yeah. I mean, they say, what's the one line that he used before in a show, more or less, because I actually cribbed it for a wedding speech once, which is, live now, because seize the day, live now, because this time will never come again, that stuff. Yeah. So yeah, that seems to be probably where it's going to end up. But I think that you can get a satisfying resolution out of the character arc for him if he does come to if it's not quite seize the day, but I should say, if it's not just that, but it's this understanding that while regret is natural, you don't have to throw away your opinions of your life just because you didn't do one thing.
Right.
You know, you did so many other things.
So many other things for this character. Yeah.
So many other things. I mean, countless number of things.
Yeah.
But, you know, so we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. And I was thinking if, you know, this might have worked better for me, just a complete brain exercise. I was replacing Laris with Beverly Crusher and wondering how I would have felt about that. You know?
Yeah. I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't go that route, honestly. Well, who knows when the last time they saw each other was. He seems to have been living with Laris for like, I don't know, 25 years, probably more than that, just looking longingly, waiting for that other guy to drop dead because he knows how the Romulans work.
He does.
And after that first love dies, oh, baby.
Yep. It's intense. They have to carry the flame. They are the Klingon torchbearer in the sack. That's the way this whole series works. We can briefly touch on all the other characters, I guess, but my main takeaway from the other characters was they all have a clunky scene of exposition where they explain what they're doing and who they are, basically, and then they reconnect with each other. They reconnect with each other in a way that makes you think that when you're doing the first season, it was a mistake to sort of separate them in any way. You know, maybe they don't even separate them, but it feels like the beginning, first half of this episode feels in a lot of ways like an unnecessary reunion when they should all be together in the first place.
I know what you're saying, but at the same time, they have chosen to basically have the time passed since we last saw them be the literal time that has passed since we last saw them.
Yes.
And so it's been 2 years.
Correct.
And it's like, it has been a long time since we have watched this show. And I don't, you know, I am not surprised that Picard is not still out there doing stuff in space. I really appreciated knowing that Allison Pill was not in jail and why she was not in jail.
Yeah, she lets you know.
Yeah, I remember they kind of make it pretty explicit that she murders a guy.
Yep.
At least one.
She got off on a technicality. They gave her criminal insanity or something. Controlled by an alien mind or something like that.
I forgot so much about this show that when the first scene with Seven on the ship, when she's fighting those pirates over the medical supplies, when the hologram captain guy shows up, I couldn't remember if every version of him was a hologram.
Right,
like in the back of my head, I was like, was every version a hologram?
Is there a real guy, you mean? Was there ever a real guy? Yeah.
Was there ever a real guy? Because I feel like we talked about that and we were like, that would have been better if they did that. Would have been more interesting. So I couldn't remember what the deal with that was. So to see him as a captain on a Starfleet ship was like there was some of these catch ups I enjoyed because I was kind of curious to see how they were going to do it. I liked the Absolute Candor guy being the first Romulan in Starfleet. That was nice. Yeah. That was fun that they pushed that forward. Raffi, no fucking idea. She didn't have much of a character to me in the first season. Seems like not much has changed so far in this season.
She broke up with Seven, I guess, and somehow got back into Starfleet. You know, like what I think is unnecessary about it is that the first season ends with Picard like pointing at the view screen and saying like, let's see what's out there, you know, and then apparently everyone has gone back to their old ways, but a lot of it feels forced to me. Like Raffi being back in Starfleet feels wrong. I don't think that she should be really because of how the first season ended and stuff like that. And
can you remind me why that would be? Why you feel that way? Because I don't remember what she does.
She was booted along with Picard, right, for some reason, and it just feels like
she gets fired. I do remember she gets fired because Picard goes in there and gives the speech that we don't see,
right? Yes,
to the council. And he gets fired, and she gets fired along with him because of what he said.
Yeah,
I don't remember why that, like what she had done. I think
they're just punishing her for being alongside him or something.
Yeah. But, so like I have less of a problem with that than I do with Rios being a captain.
Yeah, he seems strange.
I mean, he's like a pirate. I didn't realize you could just. It's as strange to me as when Han Solo shows up in Empire Strikes Back and all of a sudden he's a general in the army. It's like, oh, okay, all right. I guess battlefield commission. I guess
change of career. I guess I thought 7 was appropriate. Elnor makes sense to me and stuff like that.
Though the girl from the first season, the robot girl.
Yeah.
Until I saw her in the teaser for what's coming, I 100% thought that her scene was just them writing her out of the show.
I would have thought so. Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like she was like, well, I guess I'm staying here to be an ambassador while you go back to the stars. That scene was a good example of modern meeting old in a kind of clunky way where she has a line, she's like, you told me to take away your communicator so you didn't drunk hail that guy. It's like, wow, that's awful dialogue for this series. That's terrible. Yeah, that's borderline, what the hell were we just talking about in Voyager, the confection bar?
Yes.
That's the same kind of stuff. I hate that stuff.
It's like modernizing stuff in this weird way. I don't think I like the Jurati character really at all. That's a character that is in every single modern TV show. It's the person with like a drinking problem who is emotionally unstable and stuff like that.
Well, they had to pass it off because Raffi had the drinking problem in season 1.
Oh, that's right. She was on the crack pipe too. Yeah.
Now Alison Pill has the drinking problem, I guess.
Yeah.
Although, who's to say? She might have a problem. She was just at a party. She was feeling bad about herself. She had some drinks.
Yeah.
You never know.
It just had to loosen up and give us a little bit of exposition.
Sobered up real quick.
Yes. It's synthahol. That's what you can do. You just take the pill. Literally, for her, that's appropriate. So I guess there's not much to say about the characters really at this point, but what did you think of the plot overall that gets everything going? I mentioned on a technical level, I think that this script is pretty clunky. A lot of the scenes are jarring to me, no more than when the scene that Picard meets Guinan immediately cuts to him back home and the Admiral coming in and saying, we have a mission for you, which he accepts, which I thought was bizarre in how that was paced. But I thought it was clunky getting to the end, and it felt like all of the first 40 minutes were set up to get to the Stargazer, which is confronting this sound that's coming out of this portal. Do we want to talk about that at that point, or do you have any thoughts about the earlier stuff before they got to that?
No, yeah. I guess that's, the one thing to bring up, I guess, that we haven't talked about is the new secret history of Jean-Luc Picard that we're getting, that apparently his mother was possibly abused and killed by his father or something.
Yes.
He's got this weird family history.
Sorry, this was mentioned on the Discord. Is there something that I missed about why it's implied the father did something? When they have that scene when they're in that like conservatory thing.
Yeah. And she's trying to tell him, oh, you'll like it here, blah, blah, blah. He says, are you guys going to fight here?
Oh.
And she kind of gets quiet and goes, well, I mean, I don't know. But if you do find that we're yelling at each other, just
call the cops.
Look to the sky and wish you were literally anywhere else.
That's good. Sorry to interrupt, but you had mentioned that sometimes this show feels like it's a nostalgic version for Patrick Stewart over Picard.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Stewart famously is a child of a domestically violent household.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I think I did know that, yes.
So this to me is one example of what you were saying there. I don't know if you were implying towards that, but this feels like it's ripped from Patrick Stewart's life as opposed to Picard's life.
Yeah, it very well might be. And interesting choice if that's the case. I mean, interesting choice regardless. Like, I don't know. There's just... It's clearly in here for a specific reason because, they pull the Martha card on him later on in the Stargazer when the Borg Queen or whatever that thing is uses the line his mother says to him about looking up into the sky or whatever.
Thoughts here? It can't possibly be his mother as the Borg Queen, right? This is not possible because we see the Borg Queen later, and that would be awful if that's the case.
Yes, it would be awful. The fact that they don't show the Borg Queen's face makes me wonder if they are gonna do that.
Yeah. We do see the Borg Queen's face in the trailer for the season.
No, well, what I mean is everybody's assuming that's the Borg Queen.
On the ship, on the Stargazer.
On the ship, yes.
Yeah.
But you don't see the person behind that weird mask, so it could be literally anybody.
She never announces that they're Borg. They never make the "We are Borg" statement.
That's true.
Yep.
Yeah, and they show up in a giant vagina
That's
ship.
right.
So
Once you start putting a bunch of shit around that, you're going to end up with that thing. They could be time travel shenanigans. Could just have Borg tech on his mother, right? You know, this is awful. I'm really hoping this doesn't happen, but
I really hope that's not the case.
Yeah, but in some ways, it would tie into though just the Stargazer scene is a good example to me of modern Trek's trope of modern Trek writing tends to introduce a concept, but only to enable the next plot sequence that happens in something. So when he gets on the Stargazer, he's like, oh, nice ship. And they go, yeah, this is one of the new ships that we make out of Borg shit. Nothing will go wrong there. And then the Borg Queen takes over the ship. And it's like, well, is this only done so that they can enable this? Or is this actually going to feed into further down the line, the ship technology is a kind of precursor of Picard's mother becoming Borgified? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually thought that was a really interesting plot element. Like a really interesting Star Trek element to throw in there to move everything forward is that Starfleet has decimated the Borg to the point that they can comfortably use Borg technology in their ships.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Did you like that scene in the Ready Room where they talk about it? Because I thought that was maybe the worst sequence of writing in the show in terms of like a larger universe thing where Jurati and Picard are like, hey, maybe we can be friends with the Borg. And Seven is like, what the fuck are you people talking about? I didn't understand that, really.
I didn't hate the concept of that scene because based on the way Picard, his feeling towards the Borg from the last season, it feels in line where he seems to be of the, well, I guess he doesn't feel that way about like the Borg. I guess it's just the people who, well, no, I guess all the Borg are the people who were turned into the Borg. So.
Yeah.
But
he's come to terms with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think his point of view on the Borg seems to be rehabilitation, not punishment, kind of.
Yeah. But I think he seems so unskeptical. Like he's just like, yeah, we should have people come over.
Thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, it's still the fucking Borg.
Right.
I mean, there's like, if I know he hasn't seen the vagina ship before. So if they showed up in an old school cube, I'd say, all right, maybe we talk to these guys. They seem pretty retro, maybe, whatever.
Right.
But you show up in the giant Georgia O'Keeffe ship.
Monologuing about something.
Yeah. You got to start asking questions.
I thought that was just a tremendous either misunderstanding of the Borg or a strange writing decision to have that be like, it's kind of, it's just like,
well, I don't mind the shift in his approach in concept, but it makes me think of, again, drawing parallels with stuff they've done with Captain Kirk. They, through 3 movies, had this running undercurrent that Kirk is like straight up racist against Klingons because they killed his son.
Yep.
And he has to reckon with that, and he will work with Klingons, but he doesn't fucking like them.
Yeah.
And he understands what the larger picture is, but just because the picture is larger doesn't mean he has to fucking trust the Klingons.
Right.
Implicitly. So I wish that they had gone that way a little bit, where it's like Picard is the optimist here, but yeah, there is a little bit of, hesitation.
Yeah. Be the
Seven, I
character.
totally understand being like, you guys are fucking out of your minds.
No, Seven's is the logical outlook, I think. And I could even understand Jurati being like kind of an optimist scientist, naive person who's like, maybe we can be friends with the killer robots that want to turn us into zombies. But Picard...
Seven, when you were a Borg again for 35 seconds last season, did you happen to design any new ships with a certain theme?
I'm sorry, I just can't stop looking at this ship. This is so erotic. I thought I just didn't like that scene. It felt like one of the few sequences where the plot was kind of talking about a a Star Trek thing, but it felt to me in a way that I feel like Picard has been changed in this new series. It felt like a fundamental change to the Borg that I was like, this just doesn't jive with how these people should be treating these guys.
Well, there's a lot of like dumbness to maneuver these pieces into the position they need to be in, like across the board.
Yeah.
Getting a mysterious call from an anomaly that says, "Bring us Captain Picard." They bring them Captain Picard,
bring him over there.
and then the anomaly basically goes, "Gotcha."
It's true. They're pretty optimistic. Maybe Starfleet is just infected with that optimism after the android wars or whatever. Yeah, that's a good point. That he's particularly. I liked the idea there of like they're like it's a space-time alien that wants to join the Federation. It's like, oh, that's kind of a neat thing that could happen.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'll be honest. What I thought was going to happen, because I knew that the Borg were involved and I knew that Q was involved. When they got the distress signal that they said was like from 1 billion different languages or whatever, and from this temporal transdimensional anomaly being or whatever, I thought, because I'm a narcissist. Do you remember a long time ago when we were talking about, I was working with Sean, we were possibly going to pitch a Star Trek comic?
Yes.
The idea that I had come up with to get Picard back into the game was that Q shows up and tells Picard that the Borg are trying to assimilate the Q continuum.
Right.
Which doesn't make a lick of fucking sense, but who cares?
Borg ship.
Yeah. So for a second, I was like, "Holy shit, are they going to do this?"
Yes, this is Q's attempt to save the day, is to like send them back in time or something like that.
Right, because like I could see, Q. If that was the case, if they send out a distress signal, who is he going to send it to? He's going to send it to Picard. I'm actually pretty interested to see what the deal is with this, because I think it seems pretty clear that whatever is happening is a case of people just not talking to each other, and it seems like the Borg might actually legitimately want to join the Federation or something.
Yes.
Because that sequence with the Dr. Octopus arms and stuff, if they had just talked to each other for a few minutes, I think they could have avoided a whole lot of misunderstanding.
Yeah, time travel is not necessary at that point.
Yeah, but I'm actually curious to see what's going on there. But even there, it seems like, it's a lot of maneuvering and people not asking the right questions and kind of making dumb decisions to get to this point. So I'm willing to sit back and be like, okay, let's see what happens. But just to circle back, if they get to the end of the season and that thing turns out to be his mother, they literally did that 2 seasons ago on Discovery. They can't do the same thing, can they?
Well, do you remember before Picard started, Patrick Stewart, in the first season, Patrick Stewart gave an interview. He's like, I agreed to come back as long as we don't do any Borg stories.
I was thinking about that the whole time.
It's just like either Stewart was lying or just making up like what the actual meeting was like. Patrick, we'll give you $10 million if you do this. And he said, okay, like no questions asked. And he didn't want to come across that way. But it's another, like on a more fundamental level to what the story that they're choosing here. This is another Borg story, and it's also basically a mirror universe story.
Yeah.
You know?
Jesus.
It's like,
yep,
they're just retreading this stuff. It's not, I understand it's not really the mirror universe because it seems to be more like something changed in the past that caused real history to change in the future. But
it's more of a yesterday's Enterprise.
Yeah, the idea is the same. It's still an alternate fucked up universe that they're going into and stuff like that. So that's my problem there. We'll see about whether or not the Borg are the Borg. My guess at this point is that the Borg, the real Borg, as they say in the trailer for the season, are trying to do something in the past, which is in 2024, because it's just going to be CSI Picard in a couple episodes. And I think they have to stop them there. And then that will cause some sort of time travel shenanigans. And then Q will be the enabler of that kind of thing. But outside of that, Borg stuff, we talked about it. He goes just the final sequence with Q is he's briefly in the past, and it's a totalitarian nightmare, as they say in the trailer. He meets Q. Q has a couple lines. I thought it was fine, but there's nothing really to say there except that I like Delancey's performance as Q. Did you have anything to say?
I thought the de-aging looked great.
Yeah, on him. They did it quick and at a distance, and it looked fine. Yep.
Yeah, really, really good.
Well, in contrast to Guinan, right? Guinan's reason for why she looks older was a terrible reason, but Q's here works. He's like, oh, you're old now. I'll make myself old too. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's funny when they do that stuff because it's really a question of do you address it or do you not address it? Like there was I've probably mentioned this somewhere along the line. Years ago, when David Tennant was Doctor Who, excuse me, the Doctor, they did like a special thing for a charity or whatever where it was him meeting one of the older doctors, and it was 25 years after that guy had been the Doctor, so he looked 25 years older.
Yes.
And you either talk about it or you don't, and they chose to come up with some weird timey-wimey reason why he looks 25 years older because he was in like a different universe and like the polarity of blah blah blah. And I always think it's interesting when they choose to address it, because it's like if you don't address it, nobody's going to say anything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with the exception of maybe Data you might need to address. But like if Whoopi Goldberg nobody remembers how much older you look unless you point it out. Like if you watch unless you are an unaging android, no one's gonna. If I watched this episode and nobody mentioned that Guinan was older, I wouldn't even have thought about that. Oh yeah, she looks like she's like 30 years older than she was before.
Yeah.
Obviously she is.
Yeah.
But it's like you don't really recognize the contrast unless you see it, unless somebody brings it up, or you see it right next to each other. Like even Picard. I mean, Picard. It's tougher with Picard because he is just like his voice sounds older, his movements are older, but just in the face, he's looked the same since 1981.
Yeah, he looks the same. He acts older. I think the Whoopi thing is that, or the Guinan thing is, I really hated their justification. She's like, I just chose to get older, right? Because I think a better way is like, if Picard comes in and he says something like Elorians, he's like, I thought you people lived for a long time. Her response just has to be, we do, but we still get old. There's that more thematically matches the point, I think, is that Guinan's been alive for a long time, but she will eventually look older because they will age as a person. I don't know. It's clunky.
Look at Highlander. Christopher Lambert. Christopher Lambert played the immortal Connor McLeod in 1985 when he was like in his early 30s. Mm-hmm. And the last time he played the character was in the early 2000s. And he looked terrible. Awful. But you know what? I didn't care because nobody mentioned it. The fact that he's 25, 30 years older than he was before. You don't notice it unless somebody brings it up.
Final thoughts about this one. The teaser. They did the thing that they always do in the modern shows. They have a trailer for the rest of the season. Thoughts about that?
It didn't really do anything for me. There was nothing in that specifically that I found intriguing, except maybe the Borg stuff, honestly, because I don't know what the deal is with that, because it seemed like the Borg Queen is somehow imprisoned or something. I don't know. I couldn't really get a read on it. That seemed kind of interesting.
I think the CSI Picard stuff is going to be awful.
I do not have high hopes for that stuff. No,
I thought the teaser was actually, I was intrigued at the end of the episode, and the teaser made me less enthusiastic for the season. I'm still kind of interested, but it looks like incredibly well-worn territory, really. And I think that comes down to it's another time travel mirror universe Borg storyline, and I didn't like the CSI Picard type stuff. It looks like there's Con Air, like Rios is in a prison van sequence stuff, and I'm not looking forward to that.
Yeah,
I'm the thing that I'm most interested in is how the Borg are going to tie into it, and how the writers are going to choose to make this not just another mirror universe story that they're going into, because I think that's what will really make or break the season, is if this is just a repeat of everything I've seen, or if they somehow thematically and interestingly tie this into Picard as a character is set up here in this episode. We'll see, but totalitarian nightmare doesn't do it for me, really, I don't think.
Yeah. Talk about think about the 30-something years of Star Trek where it was on TV and how many different things they did week to week to week. And now think about the last 4 seasons or 5 seasons of Star Trek television since they brought it back with Discovery, and how many things they've just used over and over again.
Yeah. Mirror universe. Every season has mirror universe.
Oh my God. Give it a fucking rest.
They
guys.
used to have other aliens represent mirror universes of things, but now it's just, no, we go into another universe where everything's a little bit weirder.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't been watching the newest season of Discovery. I don't know what they're doing there, if they've managed to do anything new. But it's just so much. Star Trek, of all the things you would think, has the biggest potential to just do something new and like move things forward, tell different stories. Even when it doesn't really work, I think when they try to do that, it's better than if they just rehash stuff. Like I was watching not too long ago, I was watching Star Trek 5. Mm-hmm. I kind of don't care that movie sucks because like the story they're telling is really kind of unique.
Yeah.
I mean, it's even they're going back to the original series trope of like the god being or whatever. Yes. But it's like, I don't know. There's something kind of charming about it. It's a story that they haven't told in the movies yet. They don't rehash for all 6 of those original series movies. They don't rehash any stories really.
Yep.
And now it's just like, you got the mirror universe, you got the Borg keep showing up, you got in Discovery, you got the old stuff keeps coming back. I don't know. I just would like to see them do something new instead. Like, if you do 3 seasons of Picard, can you really do 3 seasons of Picard looking back on his life and doing stuff again?
Running into the Borg as he's reminiscing about things.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that I'm against the Borg either, really, but as you say, it's 2 for 2 so far. And I think that the problem is that, at least in the first season, the Borg were weirdly just tangential to things. Like there was no reason for the Borg to be in that series. The Romulans working on the cube didn't mean anything by the end of it. They didn't gain anything. The Borg didn't reactivate or anything to pose a threat. So it felt like it's just another South Park memberberry thing stuck in there. Mm-hmm. And it's like this. Well, my point would be, if you're going to do it, why not explore the Borg in some way? I think the Borg are pretty much done, and I wouldn't really recommend it, but at least make a focus of it or something. But they're not going to do it here.
I think in season 1, it was almost really good world building. Like I think that concept that they had there about them like strip mining the Borg cube and the rehabilitation stuff, I thought that stuff in concept was all really interesting.
Yes.
And probably would have served the story better to just have stayed a background like world building element. Especially if you think about this season, then it would make it seem more of a piece. If you kind of did that stuff kind of on the side in the first season, and now you're kind of shifting the Borg a little bit more,
right? Just to the ship tech and stuff like that. Like I understand that the outcome of mining the cube in the first season has led to these ships in this second season, but I don't know if it's going to lead to anything more than the Borg Queen gets to control us for 90 seconds. Right? If that's the whole reason you did it, it's whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. That bit about the Borg tech in the ships reminded me of that throwaway line in the first episode of Voyager when they're like, it has this new binaural circuitry that's never been seen in a ship before. Great. That never comes up again.
It's going to be super fancy, super fast. So final thoughts about this one. I thought this was a decent like C+ of an episode. I did not hate it. I thought that it had some modern Trek problems. It has some things that I'm concerned about if the show doesn't start touching on these themes and whether or not it wants to do something. And I'm a little concerned that we're retreading the same ground that we've seen a million times since then. But as an episode itself, I actually enjoyed watching it somewhat. Like I wouldn't say it blew my socks off, but I did not have a problem actively watching it. So that's a positive first step for this season.
Speaking of themes, is the theme music different?
Yes.
It is. Okay, because I was watching those credits and I was like, I do not recognize this music at all.
I think it still has the same motif running through it, but I think it's a different arrangement for it. I think.
Interesting.
Pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, overall, I would agree with you. Yeah, I thought it was fine. It got me... I'm trying to think about this if it was not Picard. Would this be enough to hook me for a season of Star Trek?
No.
I don't think it is.
I don't think it would. If this was generic non-Star Trek show?
No. Like, let's say this was Star Trek Discovery or something.
Okay, sure.
Where it's like, it's not, the linchpin is not, this is a beloved character from 30 years ago that they're doing stuff with.
So it's still the Borg and everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like the same franchise, same story. It's just like new characters, or like if it's the second season of Discovery and they're doing this versus the second season of Picard.
Right.
Probably not. I don't really know. Probably not.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think at this point, while it's not terrible, most of my interest is kind of hanging on the fact that it is Picard and it is Q, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So.
That's what's pushed this series over Discovery for me and my power rankings anyway. It's just that fact that Patrick Stewart's there and some occasionally other characters who are in it. Mm-hmm. I have high hopes for Delancey. I think he can be good in this. I think that he can be a good character.
I'll be very interested to see how much he shows up.
He seems possibly too evil is my only thing so far.
Yeah, they did that thing with him where it's like right away he hits all the bases of like catchphrases and shit.
Mon Capitan.
Yeah, Mon Capitan, and then he's like, "Don't you remember? The trial never ends." Like that. I don't even think that makes sense in this situation. Like, I don't know. It didn't seem as tidy as when he used it in the show before.
Yeah. He seemed a little bit more like he didn't seem as playful as the Q I remember. And the thing that mostly concerned me is there's a line in the teaser trailer for the season where he's like, "This isn't punishment, it's your penance." It's like, what the fuck? Like this is not the right thing to say, I don't think.
Yeah.
Because Q is always, sorry to interrupt, but before we wrap up, just Q is always kind of indifferent to the trial of humanity.
Right.
Like,
yeah,
that's the
it's
thing.
Always a curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'm curious how much he shows up. He does definitely seem like he's got more of an angry edge to him. Yeah, I don't know.
We'll see.
Maybe he's the king in this new timeline. I don't know. That'd be fun.
We'll see how it goes. That's it.
Maybe he's mad because the Q continuum got
Borgified.
So now Picard has to go back in time. Make sure it doesn't. I don't fucking know.
The Borg T-shirt is.
It is.
We assimilated the Q, and all we got was this fancy helmet.
It is kind of, as far as like time travel stories go, it is kind of weird because they're in the present day, which is in this case the future, and then something happens, and it rockets them into a secondary timeline, and then from
the same
that
time.
point of the same time, yes, the same era. And from that point, they have to go back in time to change something.
Yes.
It's
so they're already in
odd.
the alternate stream when they have to go back and jump into time to fix things. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like if the beginning of Back to the Future Part 2 is Marty McFly waking up in the alternate version of 1985.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't know. It seems strange.
It's a lot of steps. It's a lot of steps to get.
God willing, the time travel's like 3 episodes, and they clear that up really quick and get Back to the Future.
Yeah, I mean, because because they can't spend the entire time in LA because there are a lot of ship shots in the teaser. So they probably only go to LA for an episode or 2. I would think. I love that too.
Yeah.
That. Whenever they announce that they have to go to the place that'll save us the most money, which is LA current day.
Yeah.
So that works. That's fine.
Well, we didn't even mention the star. What'd you think of the Stargazer design?
It's good. It looks like a Star Trek ship because it is.
It does. Yeah. Yeah. Thank God.
I didn't get. Is it a new ship or is it a refit of the original Stargazer?
It sounded like it was a refit based on what Picard was saying, but I don't know what the Stargazer looks like, the original version.
Yeah, it looks exactly like that. I just didn't know if they had made a new ship. I guess it would be a refit because otherwise it would just be a new kind of ship. Yeah.
Has it always had 4 warp nacelles?
Yep.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yep.
I noticed the wide shot where all the ships show up was they had more than one ship model this season, which was nice.
Oh, extra cash. That's how that works.
Well, it's funny, but I was like, how many of these did they redesign, and how many are they just far away enough that you can't tell that they use the old ships?
Yep.
Because Raffi's the commander on the Excelsior.
Yes, the new Excelsior.
And so I was looking around, and one of them looked like there was a ship there that looked like the Excelsior, but it looked like the old Excelsior.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if they touched it up or not, or if they were just like, just make a nice model of it, and people won't care.
Yeah, well, interesting. Yeah, we'll see. It's another one of the modern Star Trek of a whole bunch of ships show up, and we don't see anything of it. It just ends, and that's the case.
They didn't even like cut to other captains or something. They all just show up.
Yep.
Because they can't get 5 interns to put on Starfleet uniforms and pretend to be captains for a day.
That's my dream. All right, I guess we're done. We'll be back next week with the next episode of Star Trek Picard, which is episode 2. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thanks, everybody, for supporting the show. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I thought that this was a good episode. I'm going to enjoy this. Well, I haven't watched Discovery, so I'm hoping I enjoy the second season of Picard, even if it's not very good. But I think there's certainly going to be things to talk about, it seems like.
Yeah. Well, while we have Paramount Plus up, I might dip in on Discovery, maybe watch an episode or 2.
Yeah, put it on in the background.
That now. Yeah, maybe I'll put it on while I'm working or something. I don't know. We'll see.
You can chime in and let us know if you have it on in the background what you thought about it by the end of the season. Is it over now or is it wrapping up? I think it's wrapping up.
Oh, I don't know, actually.
I think it's towards the end of its season. All right, guys, thanks very much. Let us know what you thought about it. Join the Discord if you want to talk about it over there. And otherwise, thanks for supporting the show. Very generous of you. And we'll be back next week with the next episode. So, see ya.